Women have always been further to the left politically than men. If you notice, about 100 years ago, an amendment was passed, and since then, in America, everything has moved further to the left. That is not a coincidence. And interestingly, YouTube doesn't like you to talk about it because we're not supposed to notice that. But now the divide between men and women politically is so huge that everyone is noticing it. And it's creating another problem for men and women to overcome so that they can, be compatible at all. The worldviews are totally separate. So what do we do about this? And why is it this way? We're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to explain it from a woman's point of view. Why are we so to the left? Why is that? Why are we such fans of communism? I'm going to talk about that too. Welcome back to Far From Eden. Before we get started, please hit that like button. I'm supposed to remember whenever Lola distracts me, but I'm just so used to her distracting me now that it doesn't work. But we have the pepperonis to encourage her to, show herself. I know you guys like her. We've got the new equipment up and running. My big fancy microphone still doesn't want to communicate with the computer. I think it's the microphone, but everything else is glorious. I feel like a technological genius. Just kidding. I'm like every woman typically. I am technologically retarded, so I'm not afraid to say it. Oh, goodness gracious. So this political divide, it became obvious, really obvious, after the 2024 election. You guys saw the women in the 4B movement. We're not going to sleep with men and we're not going to date men. And the men are like, no problem. That's okay. Pink hair, tattoos, piercings. That's all right. You go over there. But why are they like that? And why have they gotten so much further that way? You know what? It's a touchy subject, but we're gonna touch it anyway. All right, so this article was published July 17th, so just a couple days ago. So they're still talking about it. The propaganda's got to get out there because they have to do the mental gymnastics to explain all this. They have to make the excuses so that, we don't look so bad. We have to come out and explain all these things. This was published in USA Today, and the author is Charles Trepany, Trepany. Gen Z women have a deep political divide. It's made dating a nightmare. Yeah, one more thing to make dating a nightmare. And also something that I don't think is safe for any of you. I know that a lot of you are determined to do it. That is why I still talk about this. So that if you're going to get in and swim with the sharks, watch out for the bull sharks. They're the most, aggressive, etc. If you're going to swim with the sharks, I guess, I don't know. I can teach you something so that, you don't get attacked by jaws. Or hopefully you don't. Kelly Shay's date showed up half an hour late to the bar where they were supposed to meet, and things only got worse from there. When he finally arrived, Shay, a now 23-year-old who was studying international politics at the University of Delaware at the time, says they got to talking. She asked him one of her go-to first date questions. What is your most controversial take? It's a good first date question. I think I am all for get these questions out there. Let's find out what we're doing so we don't waste anybody's time. Actually, I think all that should really be done before the first date, but quote, I do believe that everybody has deep down inside them a controversial take, she says. This man, he first was like, I don't have any. And I was like, that's not true. Tell me what comes to mind. And then he thinks about it for a second and he was like, oh, he thinks being gay is wrong. I don't want to say I think on YouTube. It's because of instances like this that Shay, who describes herself as solidly left-wing, draws a hard line when it comes to dating and politics. If someone's on the far right, she's not interested. If someone's moderate or center-right in the vein of John McCain or Mitt Romney, she says, she might give them a chance. I would say for the woman going, what's your most controversial take? Depending on how she said it, that might have been very aggressive. It just all depends, but I'm getting that vibe from this woman so far. She's studying international politics at the University of Delaware, which is, sort of near Philadelphia-ish area. So you get kind of a sense of the type that she is. And if that is such a hard line for her, why isn't she finding this out before the date? Is it that she enjoys finding one and then trying to destroy them in her conversation? I think it might be part of like a sport for her. This is what it seems to me, because if it's such a hard line that you wouldn't want anyone more conservative than Mitt Romney, that's a lot of the population of men. So why would she go on the date with them anyway? Sport. Fun. Let's point out all his little hateful ideas. I'm not kidding you. A woman would do that. They would. I hate saying this stuff because it's our nature and it's what we do. But you guys need to know it. You need to know it, because what I have found out talking to so many men who are MGTOW and red pilled, etc., and they're like, I know about, like, Alexander Grace is a great example. I know a lot of you guys watch him. He does a great job. I agree with a lot of the things he says. But it's guys like him that I'm like, yeah, you really get it. You understand us. But you actually don't know how bad it is. Like, in a lot of ways, he doesn't go far enough. Homath is the same. And it's just because you guys don't have a woman brain, so how could you possibly know? And I get it that you're not really allowed to go that far. So they might think it, but a lot of MGTOW men and red pill men, they almost don't know the half of what we're capable of as far as destroying someone's life, cutting them down. And that's why I'm saying this would be for sport for her, like a cat playing with a mouse. Quote, politics is definitely a factor in my dating, Shay says. If someone matches with me or not matches with me, but they like my profile or whatnot, and it says conservative, I will absolutely X them. I do think I'm okay with the difference in political opinions to a certain extent. I draw a line when it comes to certain issues, such as human rights. I wonder if those human rights extend to, say, the rights of a little tiny person in a womb. I wonder if her human rights extends to that. She is so self-righteous already. It's almost like her politics are a problem, but the self-righteousness with it is a huge problem. This is a person with a closed mind. This is a person who's always going to be right. That is the sense I'm getting. And I'm pretty good at, analyzing women. So while her politics might be concerning, her attitude is the giant red flag. Giant red flag. Okay, so she draws a line when it comes to certain issues such as human rights. She's not alone. In addition to the many pitfalls of online dating, Gen Z is also having to navigate a dating landscape marked by steep political polarization between men and women. An April poll by NBC News found the partisan divide between men and women ages 18 to 29 to be wider than that of any other age range. With 53% of Gen Z women identifying as Democrats, compared with just 35% of Gen Z men. Based. I am so proud of the Gen Z men. Proud of those guys. On the flip side, 38% of young men surveyed called themselves Republican versus just 20% of young women. You know what I think? A lot of those men who are not Democrats, but are also not Republican, are probably still on the right, but just see the government for what it is. See that they're all in it together. They all work for the same people. The Gen Z men are really astute compared to, I think, generations before. They're not just looking at mainstream media or looking at mainstream media at all. They have a variety of opinions to listen to. And the overlords hate that. They liked it when we were all looking at the box in the living room, looking at, I don't know, the anchors of the evening news going, uh-huh. And even if you watch the cable channels like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they're all on the same team. They're always going to, everybody's going to be pro-war and everybody's going to be, 6 feet away, wear your mask. So on certain things, they always agree because they're all on the same team. Fox is controlled opposition. And Gen Z guys, they're way more awake, I think, than any generation before them. In addition, their counterparts are maybe even more indoctrinated than the generations before. We are so much more susceptible to the propaganda. Women are malleable. We are impressionable. And that can be a good quality in the right atmosphere, but it also means that we can be captured by our emotions. Yes, we can. Remember that political slogan? Back then, I was like, yay, I voted for Obama twice. Embarrassing. Yes, we can. And it's like, yes, we can what? I don't know. I didn't even know what we can was all about. It was a giant virtue signal, I guess. So I know what's malfunctioning here. The political gender divide is yet another romantic hurdle for a generation that's having less hanky-panky and burned out on dating apps. Burned out on dating apps? Well, the women are all clicking on the same high-value men, and the men are all sitting there with nobody clicking on them, like the average men. So, yeah, they're burned out, but interestingly, we're not going to say why. We're not going to say why. Because that doesn't sound very good for the lady folk. Quote, it's easier to align yourself with a political identity now than it was maybe back then because of technology. And I do think it funnels you into certain sects, like sects. Shay says, so I do think it fragments and segments people, making it harder to find common ground when it comes to dating. Yeah, because if you have totally separate worldviews, it's just not going to work. How politics is impacting dating for Gen Z. Politics has become an increasingly fraught topic in the realm of dating, with many unwilling to date across the aisle. A 2020 Pew Research report found 71% of Democrats said they probably or definitely would not date someone. Excuse you, Lola. Sorry about that. The whole thing rocked. It's got to be about her. Please like the video if you're enjoying this content. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, bless you. Goodness. Okay, 2020 Pew Research report found that 71% of Democrats said they probably or definitely would not date someone who voted for Trump. About half of Republicans, 47%, said they probably or definitely wouldn't date someone who voted for Biden. Fair. Absolutely fair. But also notice what the media does. It's either Trump or it's Biden. It's either Republicans or it's Democrats. And it's like, you know what? It's two feathers of the same bird. So it's no good. But they want you to be in one of two of those camps because that's where you're controllable. So there's another message underlying, and I understand that that's not necessarily due about gender politics, which is what I mostly talk about here. But I think it matters because at the end of the day, the reason they want you at odds with each other, men and women, is because they don't want a nuclear family. And if there is a nuclear family, they don't want it to work. They want divorce. So, I mean, the state makes $1 billion a year through alimony and child support, which is mostly paid by men. So, and if there's not a nuclear family, it's much easier for them to control the people because you don't have a head of the household who's in charge of their family. When you don't have that, when you don't have a father, it's daddy government. So they want you at odds. So the underlying political whole thing about the state being in control absolutely has something to do with dating. It's just not completely obvious. But I just can't ignore that part. On election day, Gen Z men turned out for Trump, with 49% of them voting for him and 47% for Harris. That's shocking that there were that many, according to NBC News exit polling. Trump also gained ground with Gen Z women, though that same exit polling showed 61% of these voters still went for Harris. And the awful thing is that we know that the issue that they go on is health care for women. They even had like a bus at the Democrat National Convention for women to receive that health care having to do with that little teeny person that's living inside the womb. They had a truck there, bus there. They promote it and they use that and they threaten women like, oh, you're not going to be able to do this if you don't vote for Harris. They all think they're going to be in that one miniseries where they dress up like that. Oh my goodness, what is the name of that series? The Handmaid's Tale. They even dress up like the Handmaid's Tale in that costume in some of their protests. I guess that's better than the pink obscene hat. People in the chat can explain what that is to people who don't know, because I don't say that word. Ugh. The conservative swing among young men hasn't been lost on daters either. Quote, I have seen an uptick in men displaying that they're conservative on dating apps, Chase says. Good. This is true even in liberal dating markets, says Kimberly Bizu, a 28-year-old who hosts Rich Little Broke Girls, a podcast about modern womanhood. Bizu, who identifies as center-left, says that even in blue cities, many young men hold conservative views, even if they don't discuss them. They don't discuss them. You know, we're called all those names, Schnazis and, far right and all this. Of course, they slander us and try to make us sound like big boogeymen. Quote, a lot of people in New York, in LA, they wear these liberal masks socially while still holding more conservative views behind closed doors, Bizu says. I know some of my friends who are likely conservative would never admit it publicly. Yeah, smart. That's smart, especially if you're in college, where you have to write a paper or what have you, and if you let your conservative views out, you're not going to get a good grade. So you have to play the role. I wrote a paper in college, or actually it was an essay about the Vietnam War and about how I don't think it was a great idea. And I don't know what I was thinking, but the professor was a vet from that war. And he was 100% like, yeah, that was something we needed to do, and got a B. And should have been an A. But I understand what these college kids are up against. And I understand for these men, they don't want to say they're conservative. They don't want to share their views. They're afraid that it's going to affect what jobs they can get. They're going to be canceled. So there's this, censorship. And it's very sneaky because it's not technically done by the state. It's done by, private companies like Facebook and YouTube and X, and even X. So it's not the state, because the state's very sneaky. We know the state has control of these companies. So they do it in a roundabout way. And they even put the pressure on so that companies push for the rainbow extravaganza people and all of these liberal ideas and a liberal worldview. So these men are like, they have to be undercover. But lately, and since Trump won, they've been able to be more outspoken. And I think even though you might see the MAGA movement kind of stepping away from Trump right now because of the whole, Epstein thing and all of that. Trump isn't actually MAGA. He's the person that MAGA chose to be the leader. It's honestly, I believe it's the men who finally stood up and said, I'm not taking this anymore. And back in 2016, after we had 8 years of Obama and all of that stuff, the men were like, I'm done. I'm going to say what I think. And a populist movement came up, and the leader became Trump. But it's the men who did this, and I don't want them to forget it. And they're standing up for all these ideals, even if they have to keep it secret, sometimes in public, but they're holding their ground, and they're not accepting this lefty worldview that women have that lacks morals, frankly. More of these Gen Z men are finding God and moving that direction where they have morals and they know what's right, and they're not going to compromise on that stuff. And what it'll eventually lead to is, if the women want to have a family, if the women want to have children, they're going to have to get on board. So I don't know how long that'll take. Might be some generations. It might never happen before all of Western society falls. But the men still need to stand their ground. And I'm so happy that they are. And the Gen Z men are leading the way. These Gen Z men that we're talking about right now. And what's going on with dating is just like a trickle-down symptom of the men having, their principles and their values and holding strong to them. So it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. The women aren't going to like it. The women aren't liking it at all. They don't like it. They don't like MGTOW. They don't like it. I had to add some more pepperonis up there. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share the show with your favorite feminist. And then let me know how it goes. Right-leaning men have noticed the divide too. Absolutely. Wynne Howard, a former U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer who's now getting a dual master's at Georgetown University, re-entered the dating scene in February after getting out of a long-term relationship. Though he's on the dating app Hinge, he says he rarely uses it, preferring to meet women in person, where it's easier to get to know someone beyond the limited information on a dating app profile. Absolutely. Still, quote, I have noticed on the dating apps, probably more often than not, I come across female profiles that will have their political view, he says. And in DC, I feel like I definitely come across liberal more often. Yeah. Howard, who is 30 and labels himself center-right, says he's open to dating liberal women and believes finding common ground is an important part of dating. Don't do it. Don't. Do not date a liberal woman. Absolutely don't. Disaster. The way that they think is a deal breaker, because it's always going to be, oh, those poor people. It's always going to be that. And she's going to practice moral relativism, because that's what the left does. There are no hard lines and principles, morals. Everything is like, oh, it's how you feel. And that is not conducive to a relationship. It's absolutely not. And it is based off of emotion. And so you're going to have more of a temperamental partner if you date somebody on the left. It's really not, it's not a good idea. We are driven by our emotions, and the left captures that and then leads us. And if the left is leading us by our emotions, then he's not leading us by principle. You can't have both. You can't have both, and you need the latter, or it's just going to be chaos. It's going to be chaos. One is chaos, one is order. It's like vintage Jordan Peterson when I liked him. Not anymore. Okay. I'm, quote, oh God, here we go. Quote, I'm still a huge proponent and believer in bipartisanship and meeting in the middle. And that's how the two-party system is supposed to work, he says. Quote, so that is how I approach dating. I think just because someone is on the left and I'm more towards the right, that's not a deal breaker for me. Well, it should be. It absolutely should be. And he's talking about, oh, I believe in bipartisanship. Really? How's that going? How's that work in our government? And when it is bipartisan, like I said, it's usually war or 6 feet, stay 6 feet apart, stay safe, stay home. If you don't, you're going to end grandma. Not good. No, it needs to be one thing, and that thing needs to be, pointed at true north, not all over the place. You need order in your relationship. You cannot have bipartisanship. It doesn't work. But I get why they would interview a person like that, because they want that whole mindset. It makes me angry. Should liberals and conservatives date each other? No. Relationship experts agree it's certainly possible for people with opposing political views to have a thriving romance, so long as they still share core values and treat each other with respect. But that's just it. They don't share core values. You don't. You can't. You can't be on the left and share core values with somebody's on the right. No. For Bizu, she says, or B, whatever it is, Bizu, she says it's important to get to know someone beyond politics. What is that? What's your favorite song? That is not, it's just, you might as well build a house on sand. After all, she says, most people don't fall neatly into conservative and liberal categories. She finds that acknowledging this nuance can be a good way to find commonality while holding fast to your values. Quote, honestly, when someone has a bigoted opinion super early on, it typically and usually comes from either the far right or the far left, she says. Bigoted opinion. Quote, at that point, it's less about politics and it's more about the complete lack of nuance or compassion. This is a liberal person talking, judging a person who says right is right and wrong is wrong. If a conservative says right is right and wrong is wrong, they will call you bigoted. Because you're not seeing it from the other point of view, and it'll be my truth and all that garbage. And for me personally, I just feel like if you're not curious or open to understanding different perspectives, then I'm not interested in building a deeper connection. Bye. It's also important to remember Gen Z is still young, and many of its members could change their views with time. Not that young. Because of this, Bizu encourages fellow Gen Zers to stay open-minded when it comes to dating. This also comes down to, like, what is the point of dating? Is it just recreation, or is it, for a more long-term reason, like a purpose? Like I want to have a family, etc. Because in that case, I think you need to firmly know your worldview at least. Sure, you can change your mind about small things, but it should be coming from a solid worldview. You need to hold to that, because you can't just be floating around like choosing different things here and there. You have to be rooted in something. It's that old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think that's kind of what's going on with the left, and they'll fall for anything that the news propaganda puts in front of them. Be open to understanding different perspectives, she says, especially Gen Z. We're only at the beginning, right? We're still building our careers and our networks. And it's way more important to open yourself up to as many fulfilling relationships as possible, even if that means like, hey, maybe we should hold different political views. Maybe we could hold different political views, but we definitely get something out of this relationship. What? Entertainment? They're trying to take Gen Z and, turn them into the hanky-panky revolution 2.0. I think the overlords are frustrated that they're not able to do that. A 2020 Pew Research report found that 71% of Democrats said they probably or definitely would not date someone who voted for Trump. Did I already read that? Yes. I lost my spot. You guys know I do that. You guys always tell me to keep the little silly mistakes I make in the videos because it makes it more real. Well, can you believe this article ended on open yourself up to as many fulfilling relationships as possible, even if that means like, hey, maybe we hold different political views, but we could definitely get something out of this relationship. What? Like I said, it's the hanky-panky revolution 2.0. They are trying so hard to basically bring about immorality, bring about chaos. Don't worry about, deciding what you believe. Just, get together and don't take anything seriously. You're still young. They'll tell a 28-year-old you're still young. Generations before that already had several kids. And notice the propaganda of pushing, you got to get your career all together and, set all that up. And it just doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, just get your career all set up because that's what they want. They want you messing around and not taking things seriously all through your 20s, especially the women, because then by the time you go, hey, wait a second, I'm running out of time and this job isn't fulfilling me like I thought it would, egg carton's empty. The only eggs left are like, oh, you don't want to use them. It's a disaster. Every time I'm like, this is why dating is a disaster. This is why it's getting into the Shark Tank. Don't do it. They want the Gen Z men to stop being so conservative. They want their Gen Z men to lower their standards and keep an open mind and date these liberal women who have, very loose morals and are argumentative, not well suited for marriage and family and all the rest of it. They want the men to compromise like the men before have done. They want them to be like the boomer men who led their whole lives as happy wife, happy life. Same with the Gen X, just okay, dear. And if they didn't okay, dear enough, they lost their kids and their family and their house and their everything. They want the Gen Z men to get on board with that too. And the Gen Z men just aren't having it. And I love it. Keep standing strong. Maybe the Gen Z men are going to lead us out of this whole mess. They give me hope. They do. They got to stand strong. Resist the temptation. Don't get one of those robots either or fall in love with an AI, because I know I've made a couple of videos about that. And I was not trying to sell that idea on anyone. I was trying to make the point that women are mad because they're being replaced by robots. So it's funny. But I want you guys to protect your peace. I want you guys to feed your souls. I love you. And I'll see you on the next one.